Alright everyone, so what we're going to be doing is taking a look at my personal games of the year for the year 2022. Of course, as we're going through, we're only going to talk about the games that I did play. There are a lot of games that I didn't get to play this year, so don't ask where they are because I didn't play them. But also, we're going to keep this spoiler-free, so no plot-specific spoilers for games. Footage I'll be using is mostly going to be from released gameplay trailers and of the like. So yeah, without further ado, let's take a look at my games of the year.
Just as a heads up, I did not play it, but everything I've seen and read about Elden Ring makes me say that objectively it is the game of the year. It's games like this that really set a benchmark in the industry, not only for furthering the evolution of Soulsborne games, but also for open world games in general. This game also dominated the gaming discourse this year. But again, I did not play it, so it is not on my personal list for this year, so don't ask me about it. Arguably one of the more surprising and well-done compilation releases in recent memory, Digital Eclipse strikes gold again and presents an excellent collection of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles games. This set is jam-packed with more turtles than you could think of. I would have bought this just for Turtles in Time and Hyperstone Heist alone, but you also get the NES Turtle games and the Game Boy games, a lot that I honestly didn't even know existed. I especially love the inclusion of the arcade versions of Turtles in Time and the original TMNT arcade game, both of which support multiplayer. It is an awesome set if you like the classic beat-em-up action and the best way to play a lot of these older games. They even put in like all three versions of Tournament Fighters. Digital Eclipse makes great sets for old games, and they really care about the history of these games too. If you're a Turtles fan, you owe it to yourself to pick this up. Also this year was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. This is a great modern take on the Turtles formula for an awesome multiplayer experience, one that supports up to 6 players at a time. Among the additions here are special moves, different stats for characters, and an arcade and story mode. The story mode is quite short and relatively easier compared to the other TMNT games, but the gameplay is so tight you'll want to beat this game with every character, and the game incentivizes it too. I personally have already done more than one run-through of the entire game in story mode. One of the best parts to me is how the classic characters are represented in this game. There's a lot of great characters from like the TV show or comics, or from my experience just from like the cast of Tournament Fighters being in here, with some lesser known characters, which I really appreciate to see. Much like with the Cowabunga collection, if you're a TMNT fan, you do need to play this game. 2022 was an awesome year for Turtles fans. Stray got a lot of initial praise and anticipation because you get to play as a cute cat, and yeah, that's definitely the big selling point going in. You even have a dedicated meow button. But beyond the cute cat exterior, Stray shows quite a relaxing and beautiful puzzle platformer with the backdrop of a post-human world. I was most amazed with the variety of environments and calming music that guide you through the roughly 6-hour playtime. I think I would have preferred a more silent and atmospheric approach to storytelling, as the story in this game is kind of cliché and has too many NPCs and dialogue for a game like this. It's a fun and detailed game, but I don't really see it being close to Game of the Year worthy, let alone Best Indie Game of the Year. But it is still fun to move around as a cat and explore the different levels, while also doing typical cat activities like knocking over things and taking naps. Stray is much more beautiful and detailed than you would think, and once it's over, you wish there would be more things to meow at. Tunic is a great isometric adventure game that takes heavy inspiration from early Zelda titles in its exploration, item usage, and retro aesthetic. Core gameplay is focused on its difficult combat and item utilization. There are a lot of secondary items to use that all have different purposes that allow you to play in your own style. The art in this game is beautiful, and there are a lot of diverse environments to explore. I especially love the creature and enemy design. There are a lot of diverse enemies to fight, and they all look very cool. The game's story is told without dialogue, but with a lot more emphasis put on pictures and images, with the focus being collecting pages of the game's manual to teach gameplay mechanics to the player. I found this to be a really fun way to learn about the game and really immerse yourself like you're playing an old classic game. The game also presents a solid fast travel system, so collecting all the items was made quite easy. I did enjoy the puzzling aspect of discovering where to go given the lack of directly told story, because a lot of the level design just simply suggests where you need to go. It rewards you exploring around, and if you're familiar with last year's Death's Door, this game is definitely comparable in its gameplay, challenging combat, and boss fights. Tunic launched earlier this year on Game Pass, and it's still there, so you have a great reason to give this a shot. I've never quite played a game like Teardown. Its core premise involves a fully destructible sandbox-like level where you have certain goals and you get to plan out the best way to achieve those goals. You start with limited gear and weapons, and as you progress, unlock more ways that cause mayhem. My favorite levels involve planning a heist to steal pieces of artwork within a time limit. A lot of this game is planning the best possible pathing, and it just feels so good when you succeed, and it's honestly very addicting. To me, it's a similar feeling to a strategy game or even something like Hitman, where you plan your course of action to be as efficient as possible and then execute without flaw. If you love that rush, I'd highly recommend it. There is a story in the background of this game, but honestly I didn't pay too much attention to it, as the mission objectives primarily occupied my interest. There's also missions involving stealing intel while avoiding detection from robots, destroying large buildings, stealing multiple vehicles in a certain time limit. It's just awesome, there's so much variety here. And it also supports a lot of user-created content too. Each level will also have optional sub-goals that entice you to not only be the best, but to get everything in one path. The game has a really good variety of levels, and no two solutions will ever be the same. It really rewards great creativity, and it just feels awesome playing. Graphically, I am a fan of the whole voxel design, yet sometimes I did experience some slowdown when a lot was happening at once. Teardown was in early access last year, but it did officially release in April. I believe it still does get updates, but I do highly recommend you get this on Steam. If there's any game on this list that needs more attention, it's Teardown. Much of what I have to say about Kirby you can see in my full review video I did earlier this year. Kirby and the Forgotten Land takes what I once said was a relatively stagnating series as of late, and pushes it forward excellently into the 3D space. HAL Laboratory was able to maintain a lot of the Kirby charm in its sprawling levels, loads of minigames, and great side content and postgame. Mouthful mode works great for puzzles and combat, and to me, I like to say how reminiscent it is of the two main features from the two major 3DS Kirby games. The ability to inhale large objects from Triple Deluxe, and the robot suits with various abilities from Planet Robobot. I also love the upgrades you can get from copy abilities. I loved seeing how the classic abilities got better and better, and it was also fun to use the two new abilities, Drill and Ranger. This game looks a lot prettier than you would expect, and it has great texture detail and colors that just pop and look great in both handheld and console mode. There's also a good amount of challenge in this one compared to other mainline Kirby games. I found myself playing this game a fair bit after the ending just to unlock more of what it had to offer. While Star Allies felt more of the same traditional Kirby formula, Kirby and the Forgotten Land is the one to get for Switch, and it's among the best platformer action games on the console. I look forward to seeing more Kirby games in this 3D style. Live Alive, or Live Alive, or Live Alive, or Alive Alive, or however you want to say it, there is just too much I want to say about this game, because this game is so good, but the less you know about it going in, the better. It takes a really unique approach to storytelling by presenting you with 7 different campaigns that pick across different eras of history. Prehistoric, Wild West, Edo Japan, the far future, just to name a few. Each campaign has the core RPG turn-based combat, yet each of these different storylines have different playstyles or goals to make them really unique from each other. Some of them are combat only, some focus on stealth, some don't even have combat at all. It's variety while maintaining engagement, which is its biggest strength. You can choose the order you play the different stories in, and while at the end they all come together for one of the more epic and amazing endings to a JRPG I've ever experienced. It uses Square Enix's newer 2D HD style, and I absolutely adore it. This game is gorgeous. The music is absolutely incredible as well, as back in the day, the original was one of the first projects the legendary Yoko Shimomura did for Square. One of the game's best features here too is that your party gets fully healed after every battle, and honestly there's very little grinding needed, if any at all, to finish the game. But it does have such an interesting and unique game design with its dialogue and gameplay system. I really can't sing this game's praises enough. You can really see the influence this game had too on future RPGs, specifically Undertale comes to mind. It genuinely blows me away that this game was a Super Nintendo game in like 1994. This game is just so smart, it's so lengthy, and it has so much diversity. If you are a JRPG fan, you owe it to yourself to play this game. There is nothing quite like Live Alive. God of War Ragnarok is my game of the year this year, and the biggest reason is that this is the true definition of a pure sequel. The devs at Santa Monica Studio took a hard look at everything the previous God of War game did, and improved on every gameplay aspect imaginable. Enemy variety was greatly expanded. The experience and skill system presented is just shown way better. Every weapon and ability feels great to use, while still rewarding the player for trying different types of builds that all are viable. Exploration has been greatly improved, where you can fast travel to other realms way earlier and have time to breathe and take in everything this game has to offer. Graphically, it's gorgeous, and the 9 realms present excellent side content that is some of the best side quests a large-scale action game has ever presented in a very long time. I was compelled to do almost everything in this game simply because it was so accessible and the game gives you story context as to why the side content matters. More games need to take notes from Ragnarok on this to make their side content appeal to the player. To keep it spoiler-free, the game's overall main story I don't think was as focused as the previous game, and it did feel way more comical at times too. However, I do think it was a really great story and a good ending for the Norse arc for Kratos. Throughout this game, characters do spend a lot of time talking, especially when you're traveling from place to place, and this is really good for the game's world building. But it is kind of awful when the characters remind you every 5 seconds of what you're doing, or tell you how to solve a puzzle while you are solving it. I think Santa Monica has taken a lot of narrative influence from Uncharted and Last of Us, in the way that you interact with characters during gameplay and having that narrative flow of slower traversal sections sprinkled in between the larger combat set pieces. Despite my minor gripes, I spent nearly 40 hours in this game exploring and beating my way through everything, and I had an absolute blast just because core gameplay and combat is that much fun and rewarding. You have so many options when you're in battle, you have so many different combos you can do, so many different builds you can do, that honestly no fight ever feels the same. It really rewards you to try everything while still keeping a great challenge where nothing necessarily feels busted. I would argue that God of War Ragnarok is the reason to have a PlayStation 5 right now, and is arguably the best God of War game to date. The character growth that they've given Kratos, I think, is one of the best that we've seen in gaming for a long time, especially given the character's origins, where, he is just kind of an angry, alone man, and now he has something to actually live for. Seeing this wise, older Kratos, I think, is excellent way to take a legacy character and really spin it in a new direction to resonate with modern players. And for all those reasons there, this is why God of War Ragnarok is my personal game of the year. As we look forward, 2023 is already looking like it's going to be an awesome year for video games. There's already a great handful of games I'm looking forward to, and I think that we are on a great positive upswing from the slower start of this current console generation.
And there you have it, just the games of the year that I personally got to play and experience for 2022. But what did you think? What games did I definitely miss out on? Please let me know in the comments below, because this year had a lot of awesome games. And until next year, I will see you then.